TEARALAMENTS is one of the craziest and the hardest to pronounce archetypes coming out of the power of the elements. This archetype is a bit harder to grasp, but it's not gonna be too hard, and first of all we're gonna go over card by card, then we're gonna do some combos, and finally I'll give you the deck profile. There's quite a few cards in this first release, so let's go over them. First of all we have TEARALAMENTS Meru, a level 2 Dark Aqua effect monster with 800 attack and 2000 defense and the following effect. You can only use first and second effect of this card's name each once per turn. First, if this card is normal or special summon, you can send top 3 cards of your deck to the graveyard. And second, if this card is sent to the graveyard by a card effect, you can fusion summon one monster from the extra deck by returning fusion materials listed on it from your hand, field and or graveyard to the bottom of the deck in any order, including this card in the graveyard. Right off the bat, there's a few things to unpack here. So far, this archetype has 3 Dark Aqua monsters and all of their first effects have something to do with self-milling. At the first glance, this might lead you to believe that they fit into some 60 card Lightsworn mill variant of the deck. And while they could be used as a mill engine, their milling effects are not as generic as you might think. As for the second effect, all of them have the same one, which is that they can fusion summon a fusion monster by using themselves from the graveyard and another monster or monsters from the field, hand and or graveyard when they are sent to the graveyard. This only works when they are sent by a card effect and not as a cost, and also the fusion monster needs to include the monster that is using the effect from the graveyard. This means that the monster has to stay in the graveyard in order to activate and resolve its effect, so if you change something that would move it to another place, the effect will not resolve. Now as for the Meru, her mill effect is pretty generic and easy to use, but it's not your best starter in the deck by far. Next up we have TEARALAMENTIS Haufenis, a level 3 Dark Aqua effect monster with 1600 attack and 1000 defense. Its effect reads: you can only use first and second effect of this card's name each once per turn. First, if your opponent activates a monster effect on the field, quick effect, you can special summon this card from the hand, and if you do, send the top 3 cards of your deck to the graveyard. And second, if this card is sent to the graveyard by a card effect, you can fusion summon one fusion monster from the extra deck by returning fusion materials listed on it from your hand, field and or graveyard to the bottom of the deck in any order, including this card in the graveyard. So in a nutshell, this card is supposed to be a quick disruption on your opponent's turn. When your opponent activates a monster effect, you can special summon this card, mill 3 cards, and then hopefully you can do something with those 3. I honestly think this is the weakest one of the trio because relying on RNG to get an interruption is not the greatest idea in the world. And triggering the mill effect of this card on your first turn is nigh impossible. But not to worry, because we have TEARALAMENTIS Shaylin, a level 4 Dark Aqua effect monster with 1800 attack and 1300 defense. And the following effect: you can only use first and second effect of this card's name each once per turn. First, during your main phase, you can special summon this card from your hand, and if you do, send one monster from your hand to the graveyard, then send top 3 cards of your deck to the graveyard. And second, if this card is sent to the graveyard by a card effect, you can fusion summon one fusion monster from the extra deck by returning fusion materials listed on it from your hand, field and or graveyard to the bottom of the deck in any order, including this card in the graveyard. Shaylin is the most generic one of the trio. It can summon itself freely, it can discard a monster which would activate their effects when they are sent to the graveyard, and it also mills you 3 cards which can give you extra advantage. If you ever wanted to use TEARALAMENTIS engine in your deck, Shaylin is probably the way to go. This is also the card that probably works best with Shadows, discarding them and milling them to gain their effects. Their final main deck monster is TEARALAMENTIS Reinoheart, a level 4 Water Warrior monster with 1500 attack and 2100 defense. And the following effect: you can only use first and second effect of this card's name each once per turn. First, if this card is normal or special summoned, you can send one TEARALAMENTIS monster from your deck to the graveyard except TEARALAMENTIS Reinoheart. And second, if this card is sent to the graveyard by a card effect, you can special summon it, but banish it when it leaves the field. And if you do, send one TEARALAMENTIS monster from your hand to the graveyard. So basically this is your Armageddonite for the archetype, and it can trigger all of your TEARALAMENTIS monster effects. The second effect is also extremely relevant, but you cannot activate it unless you have a TEARALAMENTIS monster in your hand to discard, because that part of the effect is mandatory. This is the part of the video where I break out from my conventional storytelling in order to show you something interesting. So, we have Time Thief Redoer, which has Shaylin and Reinoheart as materials. We have another TEARALAMENTS in our hand, and in the graveyard we have King of the Swamp and another fusion monster. It doesn't really matter. You might think that this field is basically nothing, but it has so many interactions that you're gonna be amazed for sure. So, on our opponent's standby phase, we're gonna attach from Redoer. Whatever you attach, it doesn't really matter, and at any point you can use the Redoer effect. Now, because we will detach a monster and Redoer doesn't detach for cost, all of our monsters are gonna be sent to the graveyard by a card effect. This means that we can trigger both Shaylin and Rhinoheart. We're gonna do in this instance Chainlink 1 Shaylin, Chainlink 2 Rhinoheart, so Rhinoheart is gonna resolve first, summoning itself and discarding whatever tier elements we have. Then Shaylin is gonna resolve and it can put itself onto the bottom of the deck and our fusion into the extra deck in order to summon a Predaplant Dracostapelia. From there on out, since we discarded Haufenis, we can also use the effect of Haufenis for instance, and shuffle it into the deck, and this King of the Swamp, it goes to the bottom but it doesn't really matter here, to go into our invoked Caliga. We can do that because we can treat the King of the Swamp as Alistair the Invoker, and our TEARALAMENTS is a dark monster. So we have a Dracostapelia and a Caliga, so when they activate an effect we can negate it with Dracostapelia and they have no more effects for the rest of the turn. We could also use the effect of Rhinoheart to send something else to the graveyard, but you get the basic gist of it. This is basically a true King of all calamities, if you look at it that way. So yep, let's get back to the card by card. Next up is their fusion monsters, and the first one we're gonna talk about is TEARALAMENTS Kitkallos. A level 5 Dark Aqua fusion effect monster with 2300 attack and 1200 defense. It requires a TEARALAMENTS monster and an Aqua monster, and it has the following effect. You can only use first, second and third effect of this card's name each once per turn. First, if this card is special summoned, you can take one TEARALAMENTS card from your deck and either add it to your hand or send it to the graveyard. Second, you can target one monster you control, special summon one TEARALAMENTS monster from your hand or graveyard, and if you do, send the targeted monster to the graveyard. And third, if this card is sent to the graveyard by a card effect, you can send the top 5 cards of your deck to the graveyard. So first of all, it's a searcher for your entire archetype apart from the field spell. Also, you can special summon any TEARALAMENTS from your hand or graveyard with its effect, and it can even send itself to the graveyard to mill top 5 cards of your deck. This is a very impressive boss monster, and if you use it to special summon Meru, you will be able to mill 8 cards from the top of your deck. This is definitely a card you would use if you were to use TEARALAMENTS as an engine. But also in the pure variant it has incredible utility, as you will see later in the combo section. Next up we have TEARALAMENTS Kaleidoheart, a level 9 Dark Fiend fusion effect monster with 3000 attack and 3000 defense. Its fusion materials are TEARALAMENTS Rhinoheart and 2 Aqua monsters. And its effect reads: cannot be used as fusion material, you can only use first and second effect of this card's name each once per turn. First, if this card is special summoned or if another Aqua monster is sent to the graveyard by a card effect while this card is on the field, you can target one card your opponent controls, shuffle it into the deck. And second, if this card is sent to the graveyard by a card effect, you can special summon it, and if you do, send one TEARALAMENTS cards from your deck to the graveyard. It has a non-destruction removal and it can recur itself from the graveyard, basically meaning that you would have to destroy it twice. Even if you don't have access to your Rhinoheart, you can always use King of the Swamp to replace it, which means that this card will be extremely easy to summon anytime you want. Next up we have their field spell, Isekai the Primal Parallel Ruined Realm. Try saying that 3 times fast. It's a field spell with the following effect. You can only activate one card with this card's name once per turn. You can only activate the third effect of this card's name once per turn. First, when this effect resolves, you can add one TEARALAMENTS monster or one Visas Starfrost from your deck to your hand. Second, fusion monsters and TEARALAMENTS monsters you control gain 500 attack. And third, if a TEARALAMENTS monster is returned from your field and or graveyard to the deck and or extra deck, you can target one card on the field, destroy it. So let's unpack this. First effect is basically the first effect of Trickstar Light Stage. Aside from adding TEARALAMENTS, you can add Visas Starfrost from your deck, but that's a totally different engine that I don't have time to discuss in this video. Second is a pretty nice boost to your monsters, but the third effect is the most important one because it gives you an extra disruption on your opponent's turn and it helps you break boards going second. Finally, let's discuss their trap cards, and the first one we're gonna talk about is TEARALAMENTS Meta Noise. It's a normal trap card with the following effect. You can only use one of the first and the second effect of this card's name per turn and only once that turn. First, if you control a TEARALAMENTS monster or Visas Starfrost, target one monster your opponent controls, change it to face down defense position, then send one TEARALAMENTS monster from your deck to the graveyard. And second, if this card is sent to the graveyard by a card effect, you can target one TEARALAMENTS monster in your graveyard, add it to your hand. The first effect is Book of Moon, the second one is Monster Reincarnation. You can easily trigger the second effect by milling this card, and the first effect is a pretty neat disruption. It's a pretty neat card, but since it's a normal trap, it's a one and done sort of thing. Next up we have TEARALAMENTS Selic, a continuous trap card with the following effect. You can only use first and second effect of this card's name each once per turn. First, if you control a TEARALAMENTS monster or Visas Starfrost, you can target one effect monster your opponent controls, negate its effects, then send one monster you control control to the graveyard. And second, if this card is sent to the graveyard by a card effect, you can add one TEARALAMENTS monster from your deck to your hand. Here I am again showing you rather than telling you how these interactions work. So if you summon Kid Kalos, you can search Salic and set the Salic. Then at any point on your opponent's turn, you can negate one of their effects and send Kid Kalos to the graveyard. Now, because you sent Kid Kalos to the graveyard, you will be allowed to mill 5 cards from the top of your deck, and then depending on your mill, you can do whatever else. So in this instance, we milled double TEARALAMENTS, so we can use those effects, and we can also use the effects of Shadows. So for instance, Squamata can send, I don't know, a dragon to pop their spell or trap. You can use Beast to draw a card. And then you can also fuse these away to make a Winda, and fuse these away, for instance, to make a Caliga. So out of like 1 card you get 2 fusion monsters and whatever else you milled. But this is also luck dependent, so this is not as consistent as you might think, but mill 5 is always good, I guess. Moving on with the card by card. Now, before I forget, the fact that you can use the graveyard effect of TEARALAMENTS Salic to search any of your monsters means that you can use Foolish Burial Goods as a rota. And for their final trap we have TEARALAMENTS Climb, a counter trap with the following effect. You can only use one of the first and second effect of this card's name once per turn, and only once that turn. First, when a spell or trap card or a monster effect is activated while you control a TEARALAMENTS monster or Visa Starfrost, negate the activation, and if you do, shuffle that card into the deck. Then send one monster from your hand to the graveyard. And second, if this card is sent to the graveyard by a card effect, you can target one of your banished TEARALAMENTS monsters, add it to your hand. The first effect is insane, but the second one isn't that amazing. You will rarely, if ever, have any banished TEARALAMENTS monsters, apart from maybe Rhinoheart. But then again, the first effect is so good that it warrants running it in the deck. And this is all for TEARALAMENTS cards, but we have one honorable mention. Mario of the Shore is a level 4 water aqua monster with 1500 attack and 1600 defense, and the following effect. If this card is normal or special summoned, you can send one aqua monster from your deck to the graveyard, except Mario of the Shore. During the end phase, you can tribute this card, then target one aqua monster in your graveyard, except Mario of the Shore, add it to your hand. You can only use each effect of Mario of the Shore once per turn. So in a nutshell, it's another Armageddon Knight, but because it's in aqua, you can use it as another fusion material. And because it's level 4 water, you can overlay it with your Rhinoheart in order to go into Bahamut Shark and poop out a totally awesome. But without further ado, let's finally get into the combos! Okay, we'll start off simple, then we'll progressively go into more complex combo. For this one, we'll need King of the Swamp and Rhinoheart. First of all, we'll use King of the Swamp to add a polymerization from our deck to the hand. This is basically a stun combo, and this deck more often than not does not want to immediately go into their stun plays, because the fluidity of the deck is what's the most important about it. But let me just show you the example of how you would make a stun board. So, we'll normal summon the Rhinoheart. Using the effect of Rhinoheart, we'll send any TEARALAMENT to the graveyard. Let's say we'll do a level 2 this time around. When it's sent to the graveyard, we can use the effect of Meru. Meru will shuffle itself and the Rhinoheart to the bottom of the deck. It doesn't really matter because we're gonna go into Kid Kalos. Now we'll use the effect of Kid Kalos, and here you will add any TEARALAMENTs that you didn't already use. So in this case we use the level 2, we'll add, let's say, a level 3. Then we can use the polymerization, fusing the Kid Kalos and the level 3, going into Dracostapelia. At this point we could use the effect of Kid Kalos to mill 5, but I'm not gonna add any randomness to this example, so you could get extra advantage off of this, but it does not matter. We'll just use the effect of whichever one we used, so in this case it's a level 3. We'll use it and the King of the Swamp in order to go into a Caliga. And now we can negate one of their effects, which is their only effect that they can use per turn, so basically they're under a VFD. Keep in mind that if you mill something off of Kid Kalos, this combo could be extended, but I'm just showing you the most bare bones thing I can. Moving on to the next one. This combo has 2 variations. This is the simpler variation, where you need only 1 TEARALAMENTS and Mario of the Shore. The other one requires you to have some extra cards, and I'll show you both, but first for the simple one. So we'll use Mario effect on normal summon to send a Rhinoheart to the graveyard. Next, using the effect of Rhino Heart, we'll special summon it, and then we'll send to the graveyard the Meru. Just to make this more simple, we'll just send another Meru to the graveyard off of the effect of Rhino Heart, and then we can use the effect of Meru to put these at the bottom of our deck in order to go for a Kitkalos. Then on summon we can use the effect of Kitkalos, we'll grab the continuous trap, and then finally we can overlay these two in order to go into a Bahamut chart, and we'll detach to summon out a Totally Awesome, setting the trap and passing the turn. So this is basically 2 negates plus whatever you mill off of Kitkalos, but yeah, you know the drill. Now I'll show you the more complex version of this. If you're enjoying these combos, the best combo you can do is Chainlink 1 like, Chainlink 2 subscribe. Thank you! Okay, now this is a little bit harder to explain, and it's not really a 5-card combo, but it could depend on your mills. But if this is your exact hand, then it doesn't depend on your mills, but you'll see what I'm talking about later. So, first of all, we have Mario of the Shore. This is the mandatory combo piece. Next, this card can be a level 4 TEARALAMENTS or Salic. This can be any Shadow, and these two can also be any TEARALAMENTS. So, first of all, we'll start off the same as before, normal summoning Mario of the Shore, and we'll send to the graveyard the Rhino Heart. Next, we'll use the effect of Rhino Heart to special summon itself and discard whichever TEARALAMENTS we have in our hand, it doesn't really matter. And again, same as before, for simplicity's sake, we'll use the effect of Rhino Heart, sending another one with the same name from the deck to the graveyard. Now we can use the effect of our TEARALAMENT in the graveyard, putting those to the bottom of the deck, and we can summon our fusion monster. Now Kitkalos here will either search you your level 4 or your Salic, depending on what you're missing. So in this case we'll grab Shaylin, and now to protect ourselves from Nibiru, we're gonna go into Bahamut Shark. For Bahamut Shark, it's important that you detach the Rhino Heart. So we'll detach it to summon out a Toad, and then we can use the effect of Shaylin here, special summoning itself and discarding the Squamata. Now here you would mill 3 cards, and also the Squamata will proc, but we're not gonna do any of those, because as I said, this is any Shadow, and whatever you mill can give you extra extension or just give you nothing, so we'll just pretend that you mill like literally nothing. Next, we're gonna use the effect of Kitkalos, targeting itself to special summon back the Rhino Heart, and again here you will mill 5 cards. These 5 cards could be something, could be nothing, depending on your hand. You might not need anything. In the end, we'll need the Salic in our hand and another TEARALAMENTS. This can be another Rhino Heart even, it doesn't really matter. But we just needed to proc the effect of Rhino Heart in the graveyard. So, what you would do here is overlay these two into a redoer, set the Salic and pass the turn to your opponent. So, at any point, we will use the effect of redoer on our opponent's turn, and then here's where the magic happens. We can proc the Rhino Heart because we have a TEARALAMENTS in our hand, and that's why it was important, and we can also use the effect of Shaylin here. So, first of all, we're gonna use the effect of Shaylin as Chainlink 1, and then we're gonna use the Rhino Heart as Chainlink 2. So Rhino Heart is gonna resolve first, it's gonna summon itself, discarding our TEARALAMENTS, and also it's important to keep track of which ones you used already on the same turn. So, Rhino Heart got summoned, then the Shaylin will resolve, we'll put this to the bottom of the deck, put our fusion into the extra deck, and we'll summon Dracostapelia. Now the Rhino Heart will resolve, and whichever TEARALAMENTS we discarded will resolve. If it was a level 4, then you already used the level 4, so it would not trigger here, but if it's any other ones you get the extra extension, but it doesn't really matter because you can send one off of Rhino Heart anyways. So, now this resolves, and we'll use it and whichever Shadow we wanted to go into our window, and then finally the Rhino Heart will resolve, sending whichever one we did not use, in this case it's a level 2, and then we can use the effect of Meru, shuffling itself back into the deck and banishing the Rhino Heart to summon our Kitkalos, and then we can use the effect of Kitkalos to search us, let's say, a level 3, because we can still use it as a way to mill our cards on our opponent's turn. So, we have a window, we have a Totally Awesome, we have a Monster Negate, we have another Monster Negate, we also have mill 3 and mill 5 from this. So, yep, that's basically the gist of the combo. I really do hope that you guys understood what I was talking about here, because this combo is a bit complex and it's really hard to explain properly. Moving on to the next one. In this combo, I'll try to show you as many interactions as possible with just Rhino Heart and a level 4 TEARALAMENT and another one. And the field spell is also pretty useful. So in this case, we'll use the field spell, search a level 4 because we're missing that. And if your hand looks similar to this, then you can also use this exact same combo. If you have the level 4 and the Rhino Heart and another Tearalament, it's pretty simple to do, but it gets more complex as things progress. So first of all, we're gonna summon Shaylin. With the Shaylin, we're gonna discard the Rhino Heart, and now we get to mill 3. Now, these mills might matter, might not matter. In this case, they are pretty insane, but for now, we'll just ignore them. We'll trigger the Rhino Heart here, and if you're playing an actual game, you should not ignore these mills. I'm just trying to explain this as simply as possible. We'll summon the Rhino Heart, we'll discard whichever Tearalament we had, so in this case, we have Haufinis. We can trigger the effect of Haufinis here, because we have Tearalaments in the graveyard, but let's say you mill just 3 useless spells that literally do nothing. What you would do is use Rhino Heart, send another copy of the one that you already discarded, then you would trigger that one, put those back into the deck, go ahead and summon your Kitkalos, and then Kitkalos will search your trap card. If you already have the trap card, you can search something else. So we'll go ahead, overlay these two for Redoer, we'll set the trap and pass it back to our opponent. On our opponent's turn, first Redoer will steal whichever card from the top of the deck, hopefully a spell or a trap, it doesn't matter. We'll use the effect of Salik, sending the Kitkalos to the graveyard to negate one of their effects. Then Kitkalos will trigger, and then we'll get to mill 5 cards. Now, yet again, I'm going to ignore these mills, but I'll show you the example of what you can do with them. So, for instance, let's say we milled another Salik. We could search another Tearalaments to get to our hand, for instance. So let's say we milled either Salik or Metanoise. Let's say we milled a Metanoise, for instance. We can use the Metanoise here to grab another one of the Tearalaments from the graveyard to our hand, just to show you as many interactions as possible here, basically. Then we will use the effect of Redoer. Now, because these are sent by a card effect to the graveyard, we can yet again use all of their effects. So, first of all, we're gonna use Chainlink 1 Shaylin, Chainlink 2 Rhino Heart. Rhino Heart will resolve first, summoning itself, discarding the Haufinis, and then Shaylin will resolve, and in this instance I guess we'll use it and the Kitkalos to go into our Dracostapelia. So, we have another negate, but we're not done chaining. On the resolution of that summon, we can use Chainlink 1 Rhino Heart, Chainlink 2 Haufinis. This Haufinis, depending on cards in your graveyard, can summon different stuff. If you have a Shadow, you can go into a Winda. If you have King of the Swamp, you can go into a Caliga. If you just have another Tearalament, you can summon the Kitkalos. But in this instance, let's say we go for Winda. So we'll go for Winda here. And then finally, we'll resolve the Rhino Heart. Because we used a level 4 and a level 3, we can send the level 2. Then the level 2 will trigger, and here again you have similar options as before, but in this instance we'll use the level 2 and the level 3 alongside our Rhino Heart on the field to summon out our Kaleido Heart. Now at this point we can use the effect of Kaleido Heart to target one card and shuffle it into the deck, but also at any point where we use the effect of our Tearlaments monsters, we could have used the effect of Field Spell to target one card on the field and destroy it. So I hope you kinda understood what I was trying to explain here, because it's so complicated and it varies depending on what you mill, but hopefully you get the gist of how this combo operates. So here we are with the deck list, and I first need to stress this, but this is not an optimal deck list, and as you can see I'm running only 2 hand traps. This is because I wanted to test out the consistency of the deck, and I do feel like you can cut, for instance, some number of Foolish Burial Goods and the Terraformings to put in more hand traps, but I would say try out this list and then after that see what works for you. So, first of all, let's talk about the Tearalaments. We are playing all of them, and we are playing all of them at 3 copies. You want as many of these as possible because you want to mill them, and also because they are good to have in your hand to discard for Rhino Heart. Next up, we are playing Triple King of the Swamp and Double Polymerization. We are playing 2, just because we might mill one of those and we still want to search the other one if possible. For the Shadow engine, and this is pretty minimal Shadow engine, I feel like 3 Squamata is probably the best way to go. As for the other ones, I'm running 1 Beast and 1 Wendy. You don't have to run Wendy, you can run, for instance, a Dragon or something else. this is basically whatever you feel like putting into the deck. You could also consider running more Shadows and Shadow Fusions and stuff, because if you use Shadow Fusion you can send your TEARALAMENTS and your Shadows to go into a window, then you can proc your TEARALAMENTS Fusion Summoning into your Kitkalos, and then you can for instance overlay Winda and Kitkalos into Chronomaly Vimana, get a negate, and yada yada yada. But this is basically going first deck primarily. If you want to build it for going second, go for it. You might even want to include a Super Poly in there. Triple Field Spell, this is pretty great because it's a searcher and also it gives you an extra pop. 1 Terraforming to search it. You don't have to run the Terraforming, honestly. You can replace it for another hand trap if you want to be more catered to preventing your opponent from playing. As for the trap cards, we are playing Triple Salic. This is probably the best one since it's a continuous trap. We are playing double Meta Noise and 1 counter trap. You can decide the ratios of these in whichever way you feel like it, but I just like seeing them in my opening hand sometimes, so I feel like this is pretty good. Now we'll go over the extra deck and then I'll give you some other options that you can play in the deck. Double Winda is okay, I think, because we can use 1 Winda to overlay for Chronomaly, and that's our way to remove the Winda from the field. And more often than not, you can just shuffle Winda back into the extra deck to go into a Draco's Tapalia, but sometimes you won't have access to that, so just having doubles is good enough. 1 Caliga, you do not need more than 1, because you won't go into it very often, and if you do, you'll just need 1. And if you, in some scenario, need doubles, you can just shuffle it back, but most of the times you just need 1, basically. Draco's Tapalia, this is a pretty common fusion that you would summon in this deck, so I feel like running 2 is good enough. You can also cut like these doubles for whichever links you want, because you notice that I'm not playing any links, and that's just because I wanted to focus primarily on the plays that you saw in the combo section. Double Kaleido Heart, this is good as a 1-of or as a 2-of. I feel like the 2-of is pretty much perfect because you can summon both of these and swing for some massive damage. As for Kitkalos, you honestly could consider running triples, but 2 is basically good enough. Dweller is decent. You can make Dweller instead of Bahamut Shark, detach 1 on your turn to set up your graveyard, and then you still have to detach on your opponent's turn if you do not want to go into a Bahamut Shark and make it totally awesome. Then again, we have a Chronomaly Vimana. This is primarily here to remove the Winda off of the field, but it can also be used to prevent your opponent from Nibiruing you. You can overlay double Kitkalos into it, or double Windas, or even a Kitkalos and a Winda, and then you more often than not can make yet another Kitkalos and then continue your plays from there. 1 Zeus, this is because we are running so many Xyz that I feel like 1 Zeus is pretty much fine. The mandatory Redoer and a totally awesome that you can summon off of Bahamut Shark, or you can just overlay double Meirus into it, but most of the times you'll just be summoning it off of Bahamut Shark. Now for some other options that you can play in the deck, we have 1 Egyptian God Slime. You can make this with the Egyptian God support, but honestly level 10 Aquas are, level 10 Waters are not the best at the moment, so I feel like this is a niche option that you most probably will not summon. Same as with the Elemental Hero Absolute Zero. This is because you would need to run some heroes in your deck. Considering the fact that Liquid Soldier has a pretty nice effect, you could maybe try and make something with this engine and heroes, but we're not gonna get into that in this video. As for our other generic-ish fusions, we have Kokaitos and Anoyatilas. I don't feel that their effects are extremely strong, but you can make them easily. You just need 1 Shadow and a water, so that's pretty easy to get. And also, like Kokaitos, you can summon with King of the Swamp and another water, so you could consider running them, but then again, your most of your TEARALAMENTS are darks, so I feel like they are not the greatest. Guardian Chimera is also a neat option. Yes, you cannot summon it off of your TEARALAMENTS, but you can summon it off of your Poly, and this could help you break boards going second, so this might be a good consideration. Also with the Verte Anaconda, but as you might have noticed, we are running no fusion spells apart from Poly. You can decide, if you run a different build, you can definitely include Verte Anaconda because it's pretty powerful, but good news is even without Verte, this deck still performs incredibly well. If you want to focus solely on fusion summoning and ignore the Xyz portion of the deck, fusion deployment might be an excellent inclusion because you can summon Reino Heart directly from your deck because it's listed on Kaleido Heart. And also, if you're running only fusions, of course, the branded engine with Despias, you know the drill. This is pretty much like the craziest engine that you can include in any fusion deck. Now for another interesting engine, you can run Visa Starfrost, and basically what you would do is include triple Ds, one Reichhardt, one Nova, and like one field spell, and one of their links, and a Baron. So what you can do is tribute any of these monsters, summon the Starfrost, link away the Starfrost into a Lichtheart. Lichtheart can add you the field spell can add you the Reichhardt, then you can special summon the Reichhardt, add the Nova to the hand and probably draw an additional card while you're at it. Then using the Nova you can bring back the Starfrost and go into Baron de Fleur. Now the only reason I'm not including this in this particular guide is because I don't want to make this guide way more complicated than it already is, but you can definitely do that. Just be mindful of the fact that you could mill the Nova and the field spell, and in that case you might be losing on some advantage, but yeah, it's also worth noting that the field spell for the TEARALAMENTS can also search your Visa Starfrost, so the combination of these two decks can work out pretty well. And that's it for the video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please consider liking it and subscribing to the channel. In the meantime, you can watch my Melfi guide. I'll see you there, bye!